Okay, here we are looking at causes of the Great Depression. We just spent all that time looking at the Roaring '20s, how things were going so great for so many people, right? But that's really just going to be a lot of superficial stuff, meaning on the surface, right? It's not really the case. Here's the time period we're looking at, 1929 to 1940. We'll have a better nickname for it when we do the Dust Bowl, right? But I want to focus in first on what when we talk about the economy and business cycles and depression and expansion and things like that. This is basically what the economy does. This is called the business cycle, right? Things are going to go up, and whatever goes up must come down. So we have periods of good times and periods of bad times. The 1920s was a period of good times. The Great Depression is going to be a period of bad times. And an easy way of remembering that is if you look at the word depression. Obviously, to be depressed means to be sad, all right? So when we finish with this video, I want you to come back to this beginning, and I want you to just read through this cause and effect, all right? You'll see things are very cyclical, meaning they operate in cycles. So take a second, read back through some of those, right? Because that shows you how the economy actually works and interacts with one another. All right, so here are the two causes pretty much of the Great Depression we'll look at in a little bit more detail. The first is overproduction, right? Producing too much. The word prefix over means too much. And then the second one is overspending. So once again, spending too much money, all right? The first industry that's overproducing, and this is going to be during the Roaring '20s, you can actually look back to the Roaring '20s to find the causes of the Great Depression, is industry. We know all about Henry Ford and the assembly line, mass producing, using that whole conveyor belt idea to decrease the time it takes to make things. That idea is going to spread to other industries, right? So you start having a ton of goods being put out onto the market for people to buy, right? Which is a good thing, right? But people aren't getting an increase in their pay. So they're not able to afford all of these new goods that are coming out there. So it's basically like businesses are spending money making all these goods, but they're not making any profit, right? Because people aren't having more money. But this one here, right, that's definitely because farmers are going to be the ones that feel the brunt of this during the 1920s. So they're actually going to start to experience the Great Depression a whole lot earlier than everybody else, right? Look at it this way. During World War I, lots of people around the world were busy fighting. They didn't have time for farming, right? Plus, the battles were taking place out on their farmland, so their farms were getting destroyed. So they looked to the United States for food. So they would pay American farmers, right, for their products. So American farmers would then take all of that money, and let's do money in green. They would take all of that money and reinvest that money into new farm equipment or more land for their farm, right? But once the war ends, so during this post-war period, that demand that they had gotten used to disappeared, right? Because those soldiers could now go back to their farms and start growing their own crops. So these farmers were kind of left out to dry where they had all of that money previously and that demand, and now that demand is actually gone. So the prices of the food has to come down, profits have to come down, businesses are going to suffer. Okay? And Roaring '20s was very, very characteristic of this. The idea of overspending, meaning spending too much money. Two new ways of spending money burst onto the scene. The first one is buying things on credit. Now, when I say to you credit, you should automatically start thinking of credit cards. You know, you got your Visa, you got your MasterCard, right? The same idea holds true. When you go to buy something with a credit card, you aren't actually buying that product. The credit card company is buying that product. You're just promising to pay the credit card company, right, over a period of time. Obviously, you can pay it off the next day if you want to, or you can pay it in small amounts over time. So the idea was buy now and pay later. That sounds like a good enough deal. The second one is installment buying. Think of this like the layaway plan. Right? You want to buy one of Henry Ford's automobiles, but you don't have the full amount, all the money right now to pay for it, so you'll pay for a little bit now, and then later on, or maybe a little bit each month, right, you'll make those payments. Now, these two ideas are great as long as you have a job. If you have steady income, you can make your payments, and everybody's happy. But if something happens that forces you to lose your job, you're not going to be able to make those payments anymore. So overproduction was a biggie. Overspending is going to be a problem as well. All right, and then this, unfortunately, everybody thinks is the cause of the Great Depression. They say, well, it's a stock market crash, because that sounds like it's a fancy cause for the Great Depression, right? This is actually just going to be the signal of the Great Depression, meaning it's happening now. A lot of economists predicted that this was going to happen. The stock market, basically, it monitors the economy. If the stock market is going up, the economy is doing well. If the stock market's coming down, the economy's not doing well. So all throughout the Roaring '20s, right, if this is doing well, see how it's slightly going up? Throughout the Roaring '20s, the economy was doing that, right? Meaning it was so strong, people were making lots of money. So even people who weren't normally getting involved in the stock market to make money, right, they started to get involved in the stock market to make money during this particular period. So the first big problem that causes the stock market crash is buying stocks on margin, right? That basically means you take a loan out from a bank, you buy stocks, the value of the stock goes up, you repay your loan, you pocket the rest of it. Well, that's a great idea, and people actually took advantage of it, made lots of money, but they didn't stop to think about what happens if they get a loan, they buy stock, and the value goes down. So not only do they have to pay back the loan, but they're actually losing even more money on top of that. So the stock market gets inflated with all these people buying stocks based on loans, that when the stock market drops a little bit and people start to lose, stocks lose value, people can't repay their loans, which leads us into the second one, right? Banks were making risky loans, right, to people who were buying stocks on margin, right? Basically, the way a bank works, right, so here's a bank, and that's me, right? And I want to put some money in the bank, so I'll give my money to the bank because I want to make some interest, or I'm trying to save money, right? The bank will then turn around and take my money, and this may sound unfair to you, but it's the way the world operates. The bank will take my money and give it to other people in the form of loans. So let's say like these are, this person wants to buy a new car, and this person's going to college. They go to the bank asking for money for a loan. So the bank would theoretically take all of the money that people deposit, right, and they would loan out that money to other people. If these people right here, if they don't make their payments, what happens to the money that the bank had? They lose all of their money. Me, I'm really unhappy now because all my money, I'm really unhappy, not happy. I'm really unhappy because I just lost all of my money because of the risky bank loans, okay? So we're going to definitely talk about these in a little bit more detail. I had to put my high school economy teacher hat on in order to be able to do this, right? But focusing in on the stock market, once the stock market dips a little bit, everybody starts to panic. They start unloading all of their stocks, so the value of businesses go down, right? Banks start to lose out on all that money that they had loaned out to people to buy stocks. So what you have here in these two pictures are what are called bank runs, meaning people run to the bank, literally run to the bank to try and withdraw all of their savings that they had, but the banks had actually loaned out all of their money. Right, so banks started closing all over the place, and people lost their life savings. So if you look at, the early years of the Depression right here, right, you can see the number of bank failures, just goes up. All right, so stock market is definitely, it's a factor with the Great Depression, but it's really kind of just the signal of here it comes. Right, and the last thing, because businesses lose money, right, the only thing they can do to try and save some money is to fire workers, because that's things that they don't have to pay. So unemployment, this is we're going to talk about unemployment every day for the next 2-3 weeks dealing with the Great Depression, because if you can fix that problem, you can end the Great Depression. And these are just some pictures, some images of people in unemployment lines, in food pantry lines, right, because they just don't have the money to be able to pay for their goods. Okay? All right, we'll look at a lot of this in a whole lot more detail in class.